Y'all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up again. You just keep showing up, you know. I guess it gives me something to do, right? It's better than talking to myself, which I never really talk to myself much, so I was going to say I've done enough, but yeah. You know, people can change. And I think it's important that as a practice, you recognize that. You know, the Buddhist teachings on impermanence reminds us that all things come together for a period of time. All conditioned phenomena, that just think of it as everything. Everything, everyone, every place comes together for a period of time and then ceases to exist. I mean, to me, that's my basic understanding of the Buddhist teachings on impermanence. Every person, place, and thing comes together for a period of time and then ceases to exist. And this teaching is super important to understand that what this also applies to is your emotional state. Actually, period. I started that as if I was going to list a number of things, right? But what I'm talking about right now is that applies to your emotional state. And what that means is if you're in a happy mood one day, wonderful. Enjoy the happy mood. But will it stay forever? No. And then the next day, or the next moment really, whatever it is, you're in an unhappy, unpleasant mood. Those are no fun, right? But do those stay forever? No. I get it, for a lot of people, they tend to stay a little longer than the happy moods, right? But the reality is that whatever emotional state you're in, that will change. And when we're in those places where we're just kind of stuck, right? I mean, when you're happy and peaceful, you're not worried about being stuck. You're like, yeah, this is great. And then when it shifts and all of a sudden you wake up one day or 1 week or 1 month and things are just struggling, then you feel stuck. And it is very often that idea of feeling stuck that actually is worse than what you're stuck in or over or about. Does that make sense? It almost becomes this overwhelming sense of like, oh no, this is going to be like this forever. And it doesn't even matter what it is anymore. It's just that feeling of being stuck with something. And I'm talking about some emotional state. We'll experience so many crazy things in our lifetime. And they're very real in that moment that they're occurring. And we feel them and they cause pain. But things change. And so don't forget that. That whatever you're carrying right now, whatever you're feeling right now, it'll change. Maybe it'll get worse. Maybe the emotional struggle that you're having right now, maybe it hasn't hit its lowest point. I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, right? But things could get worse. And then they can also get better. So whatever you're holding on to, see it, be real with it. Like that's how you feel. And know that that will change. And I think if we can approach each moment, each situation, each experience as simply an opportunity to begin to understand, what is this showing us about ourselves? What is this teaching us about ourselves? Where are we stuck? What stories are we continuously telling over and over again? And where can we maybe set things down when we're ready and say, okay, maybe it's time for a new story. And that's different for everybody. But last thing I'll say is, we often, I think, often people, myself included, can have a story that you use to describe yourself or to talk about yourself. So tell me about you. And you go into this whatever story. And maybe that story is not even true anymore. Maybe that story was never true. But you've told it so many times that you begin to actually believe it. And then you almost start living that. So we want to watch that. This all actually happened to me today, which is what triggered this talk, which ended up talking about something completely different than I thought I was going to say when I started speaking. So I'm not even sure how I got here. But here we are. Yeah. So be careful of the stories you tell yourself or that you tell about yourself, because they might not be true. And maybe you're a lot better person than you think you are. So, yeah. All right, so with that, we'll start with a meditation practice. For those who aren't joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to chime in on the chat box there, say hello. If you have any questions when we get to that point, you can put them there as well. For those who are maybe sitting for the first time or here for the first time, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. When you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important with the practice, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, Settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice. Observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing, once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important to practice meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where we come from or what we believe in or where we think we're going, our whole lives are filled with things that happen. We react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how we respond to everything else that's happening throughout our days. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it might be. It is direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is very often filled with difficulty, conflict, chaos. And this practice is learning to be with life as it arises. And the beauty of the present moment is it's never occurred before, ever. And so this practice is learning to experience every single thing as it arises. That's it. To experience everything as it arises. That's not easy, but it's a practice. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and every other person you encounter every single moment of your life. And that's why it's so easy, because we just have to roam around and be nice to people. And look at all the friendly faces in this room. I'm sure you can all be nice. I mean, everyone, you were all nice to everybody all day long today, right? Liars. It's not easy to be nice to people very often. And that's what we're working on. And very often, who are we the harshest on? Ourselves. So the Buddhist teachings and understanding of compassion really begins there. To begin to have some loving kindness and compassion for yourself. And then you can share that outward. But it always starts with taking care of yourself, loving yourself, caring about yourself. It doesn't end there. It's not all about you. Sorry, I hate to break it to you. But it does begin there, right? That's where we start. Make sure we take care of ourselves, have kindness, compassion, love for ourselves, forgiveness for ourselves. And as we practice that, we also work on sharing that with everybody else. But, it takes more than a few weeks, so don't give up. So I'm just going to pause there. Really prefer always just to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that you're sitting with. And again, for those of you who are joining virtually, welcome. Feel free. There's a chat box there. You can say hello. And if you have any questions or thoughts, you can put them on the screen. I'll do my best to respond. But I'll just use the rest of the time to open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with, and we'll go from there.
Just a moment ago you said something about experiencing the moment.
Yeah.
Is that opposed to reacting to the moment?
So the question is, I just repeat things for those virtually maybe didn't hear it, and to make sure I understood it correctly as well. But your question was, just a moment ago, I said something about experiencing each moment as it arises, and your question is that as opposed to reacting to each moment? Yes. That's it. Very rarely do I answer questions directly, yes or no. I usually just try to confuse you. And for a moment there, I tried to figure out how to confuse you, and I came up with nothing. So I just went with yes. Reacting to the moment is not experiencing the moment. But maybe this is where the confusion will come in. As you are reacting to the moment, in a positive or negative way, a beneficial, a kind and compassionate way, or maybe not so much. However, as you're reacting to the moment, that reaction is now the present moment.
So that's your experience.
So your experience is that reaction. You get it, yeah? And this is karma. Karma is the law of cause and effect, and that our entire existence, every single moment of our entire lives, is nothing more than the law of cause and effect that is occurring moment after moment after moment. I'm saying this, and all of a sudden your head is nodding. If I said something else, maybe your head would go like this. So our entire dynamic with the world is that moment to moment to moment. And that's why it's really important, the practice of being mindful and aware of what we think, what we say, and what we do, because that drastically impacts what we're referring to in this kind of question or example is the reaction. All we're doing our whole lives is creating reactions for ourselves and others. And yes, those reactions are the present moment experience. And if something, I can tell, at least it seems like you get it, but just to expand on a little bit more, if something occurs in our lives and all of a sudden we experience it, and that experience leaves us with a feeling of, say, anger, then that experience and that feeling now we're having of anger, that anger will become, that reaction will become something that we bring into the world. And then us and everybody else has to then experience the anger that we are bringing. So our reaction of anger is creating a present moment experience for ourselves, but very often in this example for others. So just because we're in pain doesn't mean we need to do things that cause more pain. When we are in pain, just experience being in pain. Unless it's unhealthy, unsafe, obviously. I should say obviously, but for those who don't know me, unhealthy, unsafe, toxic, dynamic, relationships, abusive, you don't just sit there and be with it. Get out. That should be your present moment experience, if that is safe. But I just like to clarify that for those who might be new to Buddhism, that Buddhism doesn't mean you just become this kind of doormat and allow life to exist. So, yeah. Okay.
How do you kind of balance or face craving of reduction of suffering? Because, like, for example, I was thinking about happy days, sad days, good days, bad days, and if I have a good day or a happy day, and then the next day is, I'm upset, I'm craving for that to go away, to be happy again, but like craving intuitively is something that we're not supposed to be doing. So how do you kind of balance that?
Great question. As opposed to the other great question. First off, I just have to share because, I've watched way too much TV when I was younger, but when you literally said happy days, my mind went to happy days. So I was like seeing Joni and Chachi and, all that stuff. The Buddha taught very clearly, and I'm glad you actually said it that way, that there are healthy cravings. So the way you said at the very end, you said something about, to kind of rephrase the question, those who didn't hear, is you're asking about how do you balance craving, desire, you have a good day, then you have a bad day, but you kind of crave the good day. And then the last thing you said was, but you know that you're not supposed to have cravings. That is not correct. The Buddha said that there are healthy cravings. There are healthy desires. Without the craving and desire to suffer less, none of us would be sitting here right now. Keep that craving. Keep that desire. The desire to suffer less. The challenge is to understand that even though we have a craving and desire to suffer less, it's not always going to happen. And that's where with any craving, and I shouldn't say this, with many cravings and desires, the craving and desire in and of itself isn't so bad, right? I could crave eating 3 large pizzas right now. Just a thought, just a craving. Nothing wrong with that thought and craving. But if I sit and I actually eat 3 large pizzas, oh my God, that would be so good. And it would just destroy me on so many levels. So the craving isn't always the worst part. It's the acting on the craving. But the flip side is the craving of suffering less, keep those. And when you suffer more, understand that that's also part of the journey.
Even if it makes you feel worse in the moment, so, you're having a bad day or you're having a bad experience and you're craving to get out of that, and it's making what you're feeling in that moment seem worse.
Yes. So Buddhism can really ruin your life. So this is your warning, all of you now, to just run quickly, right? Early on, and when I say early on in Buddhism, I mean in the first handful of years, truly. this stuff will mess you up because you've spent how long now? Like exploring this Buddhist meditation stuff?
2 years.
2 years, right? So for 2 years, you've listened to all of these people tell you, suffer less, suffer less, suffer less. And you're like, I'm still suffering. You guys are just making all this crap up, right? We can crave to suffer less. And when we're not, be with that. But if you all of a sudden are suffering, but you've just listened for 2 years for people to people telling you you can suffer less, and you're like, but I'm not. Then it almost makes it worse. Because you're like, man, that crap doesn't work. You know? That Pema Chodron was lying. So what you said very clearly, I think, is absolutely correct in the practice, is that when you are experiencing the suffering, be with it. Try not to escape from it in that moment. See it, the impermanence of it, and then coming out of it and moving through it and being with it, begin to understand, why did that suffering occur to begin with? Very often we want to immediately get rid of suffering. But the practice is to understand, why is the suffering even there? So I don't repeat that. So when you're in it, I've said this like 5 times now, but I'm saying it different ways and maybe it'll stick with somebody here. When you're in it, don't just try to run from it. Sit with it. Understand it. Make friends with it. Is that? Yeah. What else?
What exactly do you mean by saying, when you say, make friends with it?
So what do I mean when I say make friends with it? Very often, and the Buddha talks the same thing around craving and desire, that we have cravings and desires of things we want, and we run towards them. And we have aversions, things that make us uncomfortable, that we dislike, and we run away from them. So the idea of, and it's kind of a metaphor, but the idea of to make friends with it, well, have you had people in your life you really liked? Have you had people in your life you really disliked? Right? And so, if you're going to go to lunch one day, are you going to go through your list of 5 people, for example, that you really dislike and call them and be like, hey, I really dislike you, but I wish you could see your face right now. You're not going to call your top 5, enemy list. You get it, right? The ones over here, and be like, hey, do you want to go to lunch today? No, because you don't like them. Well, why don't you like them? It's all their fault, of course. Everything about them that you don't like, it's all about them. It would have nothing to do with you. It would all be about them. But maybe spending time with the people we don't like would actually teach us more than spending time with the people we do like. We might not enjoy it as much. Could make for a really uncomfortable lunch. But that's my point. Learning to be friends with the emotions, the feelings, the insights that make us uncomfortable. We want to run away from them towards our good friends. Be with the discomfort. And that's what I mean by be friends with it. Spend time with it. The way you would a friend that you liked. Does that clarify it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you all 3 went up almost at the same time, but I saw Jen first, but yeah.
What's your bedtime routine?
My bedtime routine, after or before I check out how the Cubs did that day. So after, every night, I look at, did the Cubs win, did they lose? What's going on there? I'm serious. Every night and every morning, for me, I will do a 5-minute sit. Every single night, every single morning, for 5 minutes. That's it. And I also can easily sit for an hour or 2 and get lost in some absolutely meaningless Netflix show, Hulu, or anything else like that, I mean, I cranked out White Lotus probably in like 5 days, and that's just the most recent one. Then I had a cornea abrasion, and I realized I had to stop looking at a screen. That all happened 4 weeks ago. So that changed my routine. I'm not blaming it fully on the screen, but it definitely didn't help. But I have, for me, kind of that winding down time, because my days are intense. Every day is like, I said something today, like, at the end of the day, I said, I feel like I just went through a 15-round boxing match. And then the next day, people reach out, they're like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, that's every day. And I just put it that way. Every day is intense. And, it's like just running into the fire. So for me, also having that time to just kind of slow down, breathe, get lost in some stupid, meaningless show, watch the Cubs highlights or lowlights, And I would say it varies a little bit. Even though I'm a very structured person, I wouldn't say it's like the exact time or whatnot. Obviously, running a place like this, there's always a million fires to put out in something like this. So you're responding to all that stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm a workaholic and I work probably 14 hours a day. Yeah. That's why I manage to sit at least 10 minutes every single day. Here and then there, yeah.
Is there 12 such sponsors in this community?
There are. So we have quite a large, and this is for everybody here, quite a large recovery community. And, as far as getting sponsors, the Sunday morning one, 10 a.m., you've been to the Sunday 10 a.m. one?
Not yet.
So Sunday 10 a.m. one, I believe at the beginning of the meeting, they actually do an announcement. Is there anyone here looking for a sponsor? Is there anyone here that's willing to sponsor? And then there's recovery meetings just about every night or day here. Anyone in the room that is willing to sponsor anyone at this moment? Just throwing it out there because I know a lot of you are in recovery. Well, there you go. So there's a couple that you could talk to, and that can help guide you. But quite a large recovery community here, and most of them are really good people. I'm saying that jokingly, they're all good people. So if you kind of put in the effort, you'll find a sponsor around here for sure.
Yeah, Aaron and I might go every Sunday.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Yeah. There was a hand back there somewhere. Oh, yeah.
What are other good cravings or aversions?
Other good cravings?
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. I mean, for years, I tried to convince myself that pizza was a good craving, but it's just not. I don't care how you spin it. I think that there are other healthy cravings, desires, things that just bring a sense of balance, I think is important into your life, but you have to look at what that craving is and how quickly we can justify. Anyone in here good at justifying things to themselves, convincing themselves this is healthy? I need 5 hours of this because it's so healthy for me. No, you're just lazy and you don't want to get off the couch. So I think there's a balance there. But any craving or desire that truly cultivates a sense of kindness, compassion, generosity, morality, anything we crave along those lines, I think is really beneficial. Buddha talks about, in essence, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings or emotions as they arise. And so we have to be careful there as well also because, pleasant feelings, constantly craving, physical contact, physical cravings, sensual cravings. It's not that those things are bad or wrong, but the constant craving for that, we might say, well, this is pleasant, but is the craving really healthy? So it might be be pleasant or feel pleasant in that moment, but where's the craving? And the danger with cravings, all of them really, is what happens if you don't get it? And that's kind of, Katie, your question of like, I'm craving to be at peace, but I'm not at peace, so now I'm pissed off. So we have to be careful with that as well. What happens when we don't get the craving? Then we just seek it and crave it more. And that's where the addiction can come in. Is that, yeah. Craving water is probably a good craving.
Similar note, is it possible to crave something that reduces suffering for others or for the world, but has negative impact on you? So, either physically or emotionally draining for you, but it's benefiting other people and reducing other people's suffering?
I mean, I'm sure it's possible, yes. And I think the practice is really to understand how, again, coming back to karma, it always comes back to karma, which is, for those who don't know, karma is not what goes around comes around. The word karma literally means action. And so we recognize our entire lives, we are creating karma. We generate karma 3 ways: body, speech, mind. What we think, what we say, and what we do. So karma is not what we get, it's what we bring into the world. It's like playing pool and you have a cue ball hits the rack, and every single time the cue ball hits the rack, every ball goes into a different direction. So our entire lives, we are the cue ball. And we're impacting every person, place, and thing that we encounter. And so to the question, yes, it's important to understand that our cravings, our desires could be healthy for us and unhealthy for others. They could be healthy for others and unhealthy for us. And obviously it's impossible to list the infinite number of examples. But in each karmic act, body, speech, mind, thought, words, and actions, the practice is to slow down. That's why the meditation is so important, to create space to where we can begin to recognize, okay, I'm thinking this, I'm about to say this, or I'm about to do this. What's the impact going to be? And think about that. Now, most of our lives, when we have thoughts and we say words and we do actions, who are we usually thinking about? Ourselves. Right? That's a majority of our lives, if we're honest, I think. When you woke up today and you were hungry and you wanted breakfast, was your first thought, I hope everybody in the world has food to eat today? Or was it, where's my cereal? Right? And then when we're eating and we're scrolling through and we're looking, we're like, oh, the world is suffering. Look at all these people have nothing to eat. Hang on, I need more cereal. So we tend to just drive our days through our lens. And I think the practice is to begin to understand, like, hey, how is what we're thinking and saying and doing impacting others? And yeah, absolutely, it could happen. What else?
You always say at the beginning in your general spiel about dependent origination. Could you clarify that? I don't know.
Yeah.
This Pali word.
Yeah, the pratitya samupata. I just say that because it makes me sound smart. I really, started saying it years ago, and then it's amazing how when you read Buddhist stuff, if you throw 1 or 2 things out in like Pali or Sanskrit or whatever, people are like, wow, that person knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Nonsense, don't get fooled. The dependent origination, and it is my spiel, and I've been saying, I could literally be dead and I would probably say the same spiel. I always joke and say it's going to be on my, won't have a tombstone, but if I did, it would be on there someday. So what I always say is that pratitya samupata, dependent origination, is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. It is the causal relationship of all phenomena. So in the very similar kind of theme of how I was just talking about karma, it's understanding that the law of cause and effect, every single thing we do leaves an imprint. Our consciousness especially. I often introduce karma, thoughts, words, and actions, as recognize your thoughts and then try to be mindful and control what you say and what you do. Because that's critical.
Like everything you do matters.
Everything you do matters.
Everything you think
Everything you think matters. Everything you say matters, and everything you do matters. It's all important. Kind of scary, right? I'm screwed. I got not even. And so what I was getting at is that what we say and what we do is kind of where I think as practitioners what we're working on ultimately, right? Because that's a little bit easier to control. It's easier to have a thought that could bring pain or suffering to self or others and stay quiet. It's easier to have a thought that if I acted on it could bring pain or suffering to self or others and not do it. I mean, that's been my practice for the last 20 plus years, is to not say and do all the things I think. Ultimately, what I hope someday will happen is that the thoughts drastically change. It's actually interesting because this is what I was almost going to start talking about today when I got on that rant at the beginning, is that your thoughts over time do change. But I believe as a practitioner, my thoughts over the years have not changed because I've sat down in some deep meditative state, which has never occurred, and said, change my thoughts. Your thoughts change because your words and actions change. And your words and actions that change then create a different reality. And as you continue to cultivate a different reality for yourself and the world around you, you are then kind of back to the question of the reaction. You are then reacting to the world that you create differently. That has the impact back on you that slowly begins to change your thoughts. So, if I just said, Danny, you need to change your thoughts, where would you even begin? Right?
Well, that's why I asked about dependent origination.
Correct. And that's why I'm explaining dependent origination, which is the causal relationship of all phenomena, starting with us. What is our law of cause and effect that we are bringing into the world? What are we thinking? What are we saying? And what are we doing? Because it all matters. It's all important. It all has a huge impact. Often in Buddhism, maybe for those who are new, there's this idea that like, oh, you're Buddhist and there's this emptiness thing and nothing matters. No, it's the opposite. Every single thing matters. The way you treat people matters. The way you speak to people matters. The way you speak to yourself matters. The way you treat yourself matters. All of this stuff matters. And so dependent origination is understanding the causal relationship of all of this stuff. Right? You ask one question. There are an infinite number of ways that I could respond. That's dangerous. Because I could be really ruining all of your lives right now. Right? These are very dangerous positions that we sit in when we sit here and share these teachings. Because we have to be careful. Because I found out over the years that people actually listen to the stuff that I say. That's a very powerful thing that you have to be careful with. That is dependent origination. So that is in my mind constantly. That's the practice. And I will close with this thought as we wrap up here. Did that at least begin to help explain?
Yeah, I'll ask the question again.
Yeah, ask it again because you right. So you know me by now. You could ask me that 20 minutes from now, and I will give you a completely different answer.
Well,
right?
and I may be in a different place by then.
You won't maybe be in a different place.
I
You will
will.
definitely be in a
Yeah.
different place, right?
Right.
And that's to me, I steal that from like everything the Buddhist teachings about, there being 84,000 paths to, or 84,000 different teachings around Buddhism. That he said things 84,000 different ways, but ultimately was saying the same thing. And what I was going to close with is this thought that it's a longer story, which I'm not going to get into, but through a phone conversation I was having today with somebody, and how can I sum this up? I used to, for many years, tell the story. That's what got me started on that track today. Something having to do with myself. I used to tell the story always. And I used to say, I really haven't changed all that much. But what I do has changed. And in this dialogue with this person today, it made me realize, like, wow, my thoughts are beginning to change. They are changing. And that, just a few hours ago, was really profound for me because, again, my story was, my thoughts are the same, I don't think any different than I did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And all of a sudden, I realized I've been telling that story for a long time. And that's not true. Because when I said it today, he'd asked me about it. It was this interview thing, whatever. And he'd asked me about it, about something I'd said years ago. And when he said it, it didn't resonate with me. And I was like, no, I am changing. And I was really stuck on thinking like, nah, you're just stuck, dude. You're never changing. So I was like, man, this shit does actually work. Just stay at it, you know? So just be patient, be kind, and just keep working at it, you know? So there's hope for all of us. I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the Maldonado family from their pain and their suffering. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. All right, so before you head out, we'll have our Dharma Bum host, Eddie, share a few announcements with y'all.
A long walk up here. Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host, Eddie. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, teachers, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddha traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe room. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you are done. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people can stay and close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you got well and hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Eddie. And we are looking for a few more Dharma Bum hosts, so you too could have this prestigious position. If interested, just let me know.
With a cool badge.
and a badge. Thanks, Eddie. Thanks, all.